Hi, welcome to another episode of the Out of Office Club. Thank you for listening again. As you can see, another spot where I'm filming. I'm actually at my dad's right now. I'm back in the Netherlands, which I have been here now for 3 weeks, which has been really nice. First of all, also, sorry for not posting anything for the last 2 weeks. I didn't upload any new podcasts because I think it was just too much, too busy. I didn't really know what I wanted to talk about. It felt all very rushed. I mean, anyway, I think December for everyone feels very busy. This year was no different. It even was busier. So I came home, I think it was the 13th or 14th of December, and I immediately went to visit friends and family. I had a lot of work to do. And then, of course, it was the holidays. And unfortunately, over the holidays, my grandpa passed away. So the holidays were they were still very nice, but of course also a bit strange. And then I had a trip to Switzerland booked already with my sister that I still really wanted to go on. So we went together, which was really, really nice. Right after was the funeral. And now, tomorrow, today, when you're listening, I'm going to Asia. So yeah, it was just a lot in those 3 weeks. And I just didn't really have the time or the inspiration or the motivation to record anything. I am happy to say that that's all back now, though, and I'm very excited to be back and to do this again because I do really enjoy it. I think it's really fun. And right now it's the day before going on another big trip, which is always really exciting. And that is also the topic of today because I feel like I've talked a lot about what it's like to be on the road. I've before spoken about what it's like to come home, but I've not yet talked about what it's actually like to go on a trip, what it feels like before you leave. And I can say I've done a lot of bigger trips now. I've left home many times for months, and so it's changed for me. But I also want to reflect on what it was like for my first trip 10 years ago and what you can expect if you have not gone on a big trip yet, but you want to try. You're worried about what it's going to be like, about the whole planning before, about homesickness, probably. And that's what I want to talk about today. If you hear any noises, I'm at my dad's, and I think he's going to come home soon. So if you hear any weird pause, or any noises, that's what that is. Anyway, let's get into it. So, like I said, tomorrow I'm leaving. And at the moment, I have not yet packed. I've not done much research. I've got accommodation for the first 3 nights, but not after, which I've just been too lazy to book. And every time I try, I feel overwhelmed and I quit. But I still have to book something. I'm just very calm. I even was surprised a couple days ago and I was like, oh yeah, damn, I'm leaving in a couple days. Like it's almost Tuesday. That's when I leave. I'm not nervous. I'm very excited, but I'm not nervous, of course, because I've done this now quite a few times. For me, it is the normal thing that I'm doing, although I think this time I feel a bit more sad having to leave my friends and family again because I've only been here a short time, but I am excited, which I also was for my very first trip. So my first trip was 10 years ago. I was 18 and I had planned a 6-month trip around the world. My first stop, because I'm Dutch, live in the Netherlands, so my first stop was Norway, and then I was in Norway for a week, and then I was going to go Sweden, Finland, Russia, Mongolia, China, and then Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand. Big trip. Most of that was planned, which I've also spoken about in previous podcasts. So if you were curious about that, you can go back one of the earlier episodes. I talk about this trip. And it was quite planned out. I kind of knew where I was going. But it was my first big trip. I was going to go 6 months and I was very nervous. Beforehand, I had done a lot of research. I think a week before I started packing, most of my flights were booked. My accommodation for the first 2-3 weeks was already booked. I was very, very nervous. And of course, also because it was a big deal, my whole family brought me to the airport. Friends came with me. Everyone was there to say goodbye. I was going to leave for 6 months. And I remember I got on the flight and I cried. I was both so happy, so nervous, so sad to leave everyone for 6 months. I don't think I'd ever been gone for that long before. So it was a mix of emotions. And I think as soon as I landed in Norway, which is an hour flight from here, I called my dad. So, and that's just the feelings I think that you get when you leave. And it's a mix of feeling, oh, excited, but also, oh, am I doing the right thing? Is this not a bad decision? Am I not taking a really big risk? What if I'm going to regret it? And that trip, I think I felt that even heavier because so much was already booked. Even my flight back from New Zealand in 6 months was already booked. So it really felt like, oh, I have to do this now. Of course, you can always quit, but it was kind of already decided that I was going to do this, where I was going to go, how long I was going to be gone for. And I felt a bit more pressure maybe to also finish the whole trip, not quit halfway. So it really felt like taking more of a risk. What if I didn't actually like it that much? What if I couldn't do it for that long? And I remember thinking, oh, if I come back sooner, that would be a failure, which is so the wrong mindset. Whatever trip you plan and whatever it is that you do, if in a week, in 3 months, in 6 months, you realize this isn't actually that fun or I'm not actually enjoying myself, you can always quit or change your plans. It's never a failure. I mean, in the end, you did try and you did take the risk. So that was definitely the wrong mindset. But because of that, I really felt like, oh, I now have to do this. I need to commit to this and have a good time. And I did. In the end, I absolutely loved that trip and I had an amazing time. But yeah, it was a big deal going on that trip. And I think a year and a half later, I went to South America. I was supposed to go for 6 months. I ended up only going for 3 because after I was exhausted and I wanted to go home. Of course, then still a couple people came with me to the airport because I was again going to go for 6 months. But I can tell you right now, no one's coming with me to the airport tomorrow. It's my dad. He's going to drive me to the airport and that's it. My sister has to work. All my friends are working. No one cares anymore in a nice way. You know, this is now just what I do. No one's really surprised by it anymore. It's not a big deal anymore. I'm now just going to be gone for 6 months, which, yes, is sad, or maybe even longer. But the novelty, of course, wears off also for other people. It's just not as exciting anymore, which I completely understand. You can't go with someone to the airport every time they leave for 6 months when they do that twice a year. So right now it's just, it's a bit more quiet. I don't plan anymore or I don't pack anymore a week before. There's less stress, there's less nervousness. I know what to expect. I also know that if I don't like it, I can easily go back or change my plans, or it's just all a bit more relaxed, I would say, which is a good thing. And so that's why I want to also tell people that if you do go on a first trip and you are nervous and you're feeling like you're making a mistake, you're probably not. It's just that nervousness and a combination of fear and excitement and worry that you're going to miss people. And it's all really normal. Trust me, I think for the first 3 days when I was in Norway, I cried. And I sometimes actually still do when I leave, because it's every time it is sad to leave your friends and family behind and no, I'm not going to see them now for 6 months. And that comes with feeling maybe a bit guilty, like, oh, I'm going away and they're back home and I'm leaving them behind. But I also know that this is just, the lifestyle that I want to live and I really want to go and travel. So just know that those feelings are very normal and I think everyone has them, especially if it's your first big trip. And then something that many people are worried about as well is feeling homesick. This is, of course, very personal and it will be different for everyone. But what I have personally noticed, in general, I would say I don't get homesick quickly. I don't miss people very quickly. I am decent at being on my own. Not great, just decent. I also enjoy it being on my own. I also enjoy being around people, but I'm quite good at it in some cases. But I also know when I suck at being alone and why that is. But for me, homesickness, is that the right word? I think so. To me, it happens sometimes, and there's a couple things I want to say about it. If you do get homesick, that does not mean that the traveling or what you're doing is necessarily wrong. I think what it could mean is that the place where you're at or the people that you're with are not right. Sometimes, generally, when I don't feel well when I'm traveling, it's because of the place or the situation that I'm in. And it's usually temporary. I know, okay, as soon as I go to the next place or I change my environment or I change the place I stay or I meet different people, I feel better again and I feel happy. So if you occasionally get homesick, I think that's very normal. And it will depend per person how often that happens. And I don't think you'll really know until you go on a trip. And I have met people who said they got really, really homesick and then they would also go home. And I think that's fair too. I think what some people forget, whenever you do get homesick, I think there always is a chance to go home. And of course, that is still quite the privilege when you say, oh, from wherever in the world, I can just go and fly back home. Because, of course, you need the money for that. But that is also why I think the digital nomad life only works if you have that opportunity. Because that means you can get yourself out of those situations that don't work, or you can fly yourself home if you really want to. But even if you do say you set a 6-month trip and you get homesick, you could leave early, or you can just rough it out for the next couple of weeks and just say, you know what, I am homesick, I miss people, I'm just going to call them more often. Because I do think generally it is temporary, and you can change how you think about it, how often you call home, who you're with, to start feeling better. And I think they also go hand in hand. Like, I love traveling and I love being away, but that doesn't mean I never get homesick. I can love my life and travel and still sometimes be homesick. And I will say it doesn't happen often, and it happens less and less too. I get used to not being at home, and sometimes that is hard, especially when I hear them going to different parties, or and I mean when they throw a party or there's some live event happening or thing that I would have liked to be at. Those are the moments that I feel homesick, but those also pass, and it doesn't mean that I like traveling any less. But yeah, sometimes it just hits you, and I think that's completely fine, and that happens too, but I wouldn't be too worried about it. In the end, that feeling, again, it passes. You can fix it. You can distract yourself. You can call home more often. You can even go home more often. And I think not going just because you might get homesick, I don't think that's a good decision. And something I also wanted to say, that homesickness, I think also I got because I was actually leaving home. It really felt, especially in that first trip, I was leaving home. There was something I would come back to, and people that were waiting for me back home, a life that was waiting for me back home that I was going to come back to. So I was actually leaving a place, a home, for something else that was temporary, and then I was going to come back. And right now I don't have that. My life is not necessarily in the Netherlands. Of course, I have friends and family who I miss, but the rest of my life doesn't really happen here. A lot of it happens when I'm traveling, when I'm meeting people, when I see my friends abroad, when I work abroad. That is much more my life than what I have here in the Netherlands, which is also why generally when I'm back here after about a month, I'm bored and I want to leave, because this actually feels like the break, or this almost feels like the vacation of my trip, if that makes sense. But yeah, I don't leave anymore. I am actually going back to my normal life, which I think also is why that homesickness feeling doesn't happen often. I miss people. occasionally, and I miss not being included in their lives as much, or them being a part of my life as much. But then, my life is now not here anymore. And the one thing that I do enjoy so much is sometimes sharing that again. So now coming back home and going to everyone and seeing everyone and being able to be there is amazing. And I think I also appreciate it more, and I really value it. And it does make me feel bad to know that I'm going to miss out on things that are happening at the end of January or in February. But that's just part of it. But I do really value now being home and being part of everything. Plus, occasionally when they come with me or they visit me somewhere, that's absolutely amazing. Like 2 years ago, my dad and my sister came to Japan, which was the best. I had a friend of mine join me in Sri Lanka. Just last week, I went with my sister to Switzerland, which was really nice. And then I feel like I'm doing something that I really love with someone that I really love, which is, of course, the best feeling. But yeah, I'm just no longer leaving something. I'm actually going back to my normal life. And the Netherlands is like a break, which I think is also why leaving doesn't feel like such a big deal. It's not leaving. I'm not leaving anything. I'm going back, if that makes sense. And I think the more you travel, or the more you set this life up to be completely location independent, the more you'll feel like that. I'm actually just going back to my life instead of the other way around. So I would say, if you have planned a big trip and you're really nervous and you're stressed and you're wondering if you're doing the wrong thing, you're not. Very normal feelings. You're going to be nervous. You're going to be stressed. You're going to feel like you need to figure everything out before you leave. I promise you don't. If you want more tips on travel in general, what it's like, why I would recommend to not plan too much, or where to book, everything to do with travel, basically, have a look at my other podcast episodes. They talk all about this. In general, I think on my social media you'll find a lot. Someone's been calling me. I'm gonna have to call them back. So have a look at other episodes. I also am going to go back to dropping a podcast episode every week. I'm really gonna try and do that. I had a break, but I am back. So if you do have a trip planned, also let me know where it is going, what you're going to do. I'm very curious. Again, I'm heading to Asia soon, tomorrow. I'm planning to be there for the year, which is ambitious, I think, because generally somehow I end up being back in the Netherlands just because things happen. Things like weddings, funerals, life events, money, whatever it is, I always end up coming back to the Netherlands, also just to see, of course, friends and family. So we'll see how that goes, but I am very excited for it. It's just going to be, again, me and my dad getting to the airport. I'm going to say goodbye and then I'm going to go. But I am super excited. So I really hope that this episode might have helped in case you were worried about traveling or going on a first big trip. I promise you, it's going to be all right. You're going to enjoy it so much. It's going to be amazing. And I want to thank you again for listening. Don't forget to rate, subscribe, share, follow me on social media, whatever it is. It really helps. And it's really nice to see that people are enjoying my podcast and my content. And then I hope to see you again next week. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.